There is something researchers have noticed when studying people who lose fat consistently and keep it off for years. Something that shows up before the diet changes, before the exercise routine, before any physical intervention at all. It shows up in how they think. Not in a motivational sense, not in the believe in yourself sense, in a measurably different neurological and psychological sense. The way their brains process decisions, handle discomfort, relate to their own bodies, and respond to failure. It is structurally different from the patterns researchers see in people who struggle with fat loss, regardless of how hard they try. And here's the part that changes everything. These psychological patterns are not personality traits they were born with. They are trainable. They are habits of mind that developed over time, through repeated choices, and they can be built at any age, from any starting point, because the brain that runs them is plastic. It changes in response to what you repeatedly ask it to do. Most people approach fat loss as a body problem. Eat less, move more, adjust the physical inputs. And they are not wrong. The physical inputs matter. But what the research consistently shows is that the body problem has a psychology underneath it. And the people whose fat cells burn faster have already, consciously or not, solved the psychology. Stay with me, because this is rarely explained, and by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what is happening inside the minds of people whose metabolism responds differently and what you can do to build the same patterns. The first psychological pattern is the one almost nobody expects. People whose fat cells burn faster have a fundamentally different relationship with discomfort. Not a higher pain tolerance, not some aggressive willingness to suffer. Something quieter and more specific than that. They have learned through repetition and through experience that discomfort is temporary, that it carries information, and that moving through it rather than away from it produces outcomes they value. Here is why this matters at the biological level. Fat burning is a process that requires the body to access stored energy, and accessing stored energy requires a physiological state that is, by definition, mildly uncomfortable. A slight hunger between meals, a breathing that is noticeably elevated during movement, a temporary depletion that the body registers and reports. These signals are real. They are not pleasant. And they are precisely the signals that indicate fat metabolism is active. Most people interpret these signals as problems to be immediately solved. Hunger arrives, and food arrives with it quickly. Exertion becomes uncomfortable, and the pace drops immediately. The body never sustains the state long enough for fat burning to run meaningfully. People whose fat cells burn faster do not interpret these signals the same way. They have built, over time, a relationship with mild discomfort that does not automatically trigger the removal of that discomfort. They notice hunger without urgency. They feel exertion without immediately backing off. They have learned that the feeling is not a crisis. It is the process working. This is not willpower in the conventional sense. Willpower is a force you apply against resistance, and it depletes. What these people have developed is something closer to equanimity, a resting familiarity with discomfort that requires no active force to maintain. The discomfort simply does not alarm them the way it alarms most people. And the biological consequence of this psychological difference is significant. Their bodies spend more time in the physiological states, mild caloric deficit, elevated moderate movement, brief hunger where fat oxidation runs at its highest rate. Not because they are pushing harder, because they are not retreating as quickly. The practical implication of this is not tolerate more pain. It is something more specific and more achievable. It is building a new interpretation of the signal. Hunger, for most modern adults, has been conditioned to mean eat now. The signal arrives, and the response is immediate and automatic. But hunger is not an emergency. It is a report from your metabolic system that stored energy is being considered as a fuel source. In a well-nourished person, it is information, not danger. The people whose fat cells burn faster have, through practice, learned to sit with that signal for a period without immediately acting on it, not indefinitely, not through deprivation, but long enough for the physiological state it represents to continue running, long enough for the process to work. Have you ever noticed a moment when you felt hungry, waited a while, and the hunger passed? That passing, that temporary shift, is your body briefly accessing fat stores. Your cells were doing exactly what you want them to do. And the only thing that allowed it to happen was not immediately removing the signal. That is not a small thing. Repeated across weeks and months, that single psychological shift, a different relationship with the discomfort of mild hunger, produces a measurably different metabolic trajectory. Tell me in the comments, do you eat the moment hunger arrives, or do you ever let it settle? I genuinely want to know where most people are with this. And if you enjoy understanding the quiet science happening inside your body and mind, subscribe. If something in the last few minutes already made something click, tap the like button. The second psychological pattern is one that shows up consistently in research on people who maintain low body fat long-term, and it has nothing to do with diet discipline or exercise motivation. It has to do with identity. People whose fat cells burn faster tend to have built, over time, a self-concept that is organized around movement, health, and physical function, not around weight, appearance, or a goal they are trying to reach. The distinction sounds subtle. The biological consequences are not subtle at all. Here is the mechanism. When your self-concept includes, I am someone who moves regularly, or I am someone who pays attention to what I put in my body, the behaviors that support fat metabolism are not effortful choices. They are expressions of who you already believe yourself to be. You don't decide to go for a walk, you go, because that is what you do. You don't choose a lighter meal over a heavier one through willpower, you choose it because it aligns with how you already see yourself. This identity-based psychology removes the decision fatigue that undermines almost every diet and exercise program. Decision fatigue is real and measurable. Every time you have to make a conscious choice about eating or moving, you are drawing from a cognitive resource that depletes across the day. People who rely on willpower and conscious decision-making to maintain their habits run out of that resource by evening, which is exactly why most overeating happens after dinner and exactly why most skipped workouts happen at the end of the day. People whose fat cells burn faster are not making fewer decisions because they have better willpower. They are making fewer decisions because their identity has absorbed the habit. The behavior is no longer a choice, it is a default. This is why researchers who study long-term weight maintenance consistently find that the people who succeed are not the ones with the strictest programs. They are the ones who have built the deepest identity alignment with their habits. Their relationship with food and movement has become who they are rather than what they are trying to do. Inside your body, this psychological shift produces a hormonal environment that directly supports fat metabolism. When movement is stress-free and expected rather than effortful and resisted, cortisol stays lower during exercise. Lower cortisol during movement means the hormonal environment is more favorable for fat oxidation rather than glucose burning. The same physical activity, done from a place of identity rather than obligation, produces a measurably different metabolic outcome. This is the finding most people find hardest to believe, that the psychology behind a behavior changes the physiology of that behavior. But the research is consistent. Stress hormones respond to perceived effort, not just physical effort. A walk taken joylessly under obligation produces a different cortisol response than the same walk taken as a natural expression of who you are. And cortisol directly suppresses the fat-burning pathways. The third pattern is one that researchers specifically associate with the metabolic profiles of people who lose fat consistently. And it is the pattern that most directly connects psychology to cellular fat burning. It is their relationship with consistency over intensity. Most people approach fat loss through intensity, a strict diet for 3 weeks, an aggressive exercise program, a total overhaul that produces rapid early results and then collapses under its own unsustainability. The pattern is familiar because it is nearly universal. And it fails not because the effort is wrong, but because it is structured in a way that cannot compound. People whose fat cells burn faster are almost never the most intense people in the room. They are not doing the hardest workouts, following the most restrictive diets, or applying the most aggressive interventions. They are doing something that appears almost underwhelming, moving consistently at a sustainable pace, eating within a predictable structure, sleeping at regular times, and they have been doing it for a very long time. The biological reason this outperforms intensity is now well understood. Fat oxidation improves with training. The more consistently your body is asked to burn fat as a fuel source, through regular moderate movement, through regular overnight fasting windows, through regular periods of moderate caloric balance, the better it becomes at doing so. Mitochondrial density increases. Metabolic flexibility improves. The cellular machinery that processes fat becomes more efficient, more responsive, and more active at baseline. This adaptation takes weeks to begin and months to compound. It requires consistency to build and inconsistency to disrupt. An aggressive 2-week program followed by 2 weeks of normal behavior does not accumulate. It resets. The biology requires continuity. People whose fat cells burn faster have built the psychology that supports continuity. They are not chasing results. They are maintaining conditions. And the difference in their fat metabolism after 2 years of maintained conditions versus 2 years of intense, then reset cycles is not marginal. It is transformational. Now let me give you the specific psychological habits that produce everything described in this video, because understanding the patterns is different from knowing how to build them. Step 1. Reinterpret the discomfort signal. The next time you feel mild hunger, do not eat immediately. Wait 20 to 30 minutes. Notice what happens. In most cases, the intensity of the signal will shift. It will not become an emergency. It will settle into something more neutral. Do this not as a deprivation practice, but as an observation practice. You are training your nervous system to recognize that the signal is information, not a crisis. The mistake most people make, they wait until they are intensely hungry and then experience the wait as suffering. Start when hunger is mild. The neurological retraining happens at the mild level, not the extreme level. Step 2. Build one movement identity anchor. Choose one movement behavior that you will do every single day, regardless of how you feel. Not a workout. Not a session. A behavior. 10 minutes of walking before breakfast. A set of stairs instead of a lift. A short walk after dinner. Something so small that the barrier to doing it is essentially zero. Do it every day for 8 weeks. Do not skip it. Do not upgrade it during that period. Just do the same small thing every single day until it requires no decision, until it is simply what you do. The biological consequence of this single habit done consistently is significant. It keeps your metabolic system in a mild fat-burning state daily. It anchors a movement identity that will generalize to other behaviors over time, and it builds the neurological evidence, the repeated proof that you are someone who follows through. This is the one most people skip. Do not skip it. Step 3. Protect your consistency over your intensity. When you feel motivated, when you want to do more, restrict more, push harder, resist the urge to escalate. Instead, ask yourself, can I do this exact level of effort for the next 6 months without burning out? If the answer is no, reduce the intensity until the answer is yes. The mistake most people make is treating high motivation as a resource to maximize. They push hardest when they feel best and crash when the motivation fades. People whose fat cells burn faster treat motivation differently. They use it to show up, not to escalate. They keep their behavior at a level they can sustain regardless of how motivated they feel on any given day. This psychological discipline, choosing sustainability over intensity when the two are in conflict, is one of the most important factors in long-term fat metabolism that researchers have identified. Because the fat-burning adaptations inside your cells only compound if the conditions that produce them are maintained continuously. Disruption resets the adaptation. Continuity builds it. Step 4. Separate your identity from your outcomes. People whose fat cells burn faster do not define themselves by the number on a scale or the rate of visible change. They define themselves by the consistency of their behavior. They are someone who moves daily, eats within a predictable structure, sleeps at consistent times. The outcomes are a consequence of the identity, not the measure of it. This separation matters psychologically because outcome-based identity is inherently fragile. When the scale doesn't move, when results plateau, when progress is invisible for weeks, outcome-based identity collapses. Behavior-based identity does not. The behavior is the identity, and the behavior continues regardless of whether the mirror is cooperating. And here is the biological reality behind that psychological discipline. Fat loss is not linear. The cellular adaptations, improved mitochondrial density, better metabolic flexibility, more efficient fat oxidation, build slowly and often invisibly. Weeks of maintained behavior produce internal changes that the mirror does not yet reflect. People who quit during this invisible period never see the compounding that was about to begin. People who continue through it emerge on the other side with a fundamentally different metabolic baseline. Your fat cells are not your enemy. They are responding to the hormonal and metabolic environment your daily habits create. Build the psychology that maintains the right environment consistently, and the biology follows, not immediately, not dramatically, but reliably and permanently. What surprised you most in this video? Which of these 4 psychological patterns is the one you're most out of alignment with right now? Tell me in the comments. If you enjoy discovering the quiet science happening inside your body and mind, subscribe for more. New videos every week. In the next video, we'll explore something even more fascinating. What happens inside your fat cells during the first 30 minutes of walking, minute by minute, and why that specific window may be the most important part of your entire day. Your body is not failing you. It has been waiting for the right information. Now, you have it.